Over the weekend, we saw events escalate in Iran and across the Middle East. I sat with our Chief Investment Officer, Scott Osborne, today to discuss developments and the implications on oil prices and why our investors shouldn't be worried. Hi, I'm Jessica Creasey, part of the communications team here at Astute, and I am sat with Scott, our Chief Investment Officer, this morning to discuss the events of the weekend. So Scott, obviously major developments over the last 48 hours regarding the strikes on Iran. What is the short-term impact of these events on markets, and what can we expect over the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, obviously I think that the main thing is the oil price, right? So start there. We'd seen already in the run-up to this, obviously the US has been building forces in the region for a while. Oil prices have been drifting higher, and then on the news, the oil prices jumped sort of 10-12%, around $80 a barrel for Brent crude. Now that's the immediate impact, and it's not necessarily because Iran is a big oil producer. It's not actually that big a player in global oil markets. But as we know, and you'll have seen on the news, that the Strait of Hormuz there, which is a sort of bay between Iran and Oman and the United Arab Emirates, almost all of Saudi Arabia's oil comes out that way as well, plus Iraq, plus Kuwait. So about 1 in every 3 barrels of oil will come through the Strait of Hormuz. So if that is closed, which it kind of looks like it is at the moment, or at least there's not a lot of traffic going through it, then that will affect oil prices going forward, and that's why we've seen on it the sort of forward price in oil markets have corrected already up to $80. That's the main channel for any sort of longer term implications as well. Obviously the fears generally around this type of thing crystallize around inflation again. We've all sort of got bad memories of post-COVID, oil prices high and low, and how that fed through to inflation. And I think that is what generally markets will be most worried about, is that if oil prices keep moving higher, or the conflict becomes very sustained, that it could start to feed through to inflation. But at $80, I don't really think that's much of an issue. Even around $90 for a short amount of time, that the world will probably be okay. It's only if we start talking about $100, $120 oil that it starts to really bite. And to be fair, that's mostly for emerging markets, who are the sort of biggest importers of oil out of that part of the world. The final thing to say there is that if we did get there, then it would start really hitting inflation in the US as much as anywhere else. And Donald Trump's already sort of in trouble at the November midterms in terms of his record in inflation. The actions in Iran seem to, at least at the moment, be generally unpopular. So if we did start to see some of those potential longer term problems developing, it would be as big an issue for Donald Trump as anywhere else, and it's within his power obviously to ease up. So we do think it's a very kind of short term oil price shock. We'll have to see what happens in the coming weeks in terms of how long the conflict lasts, which is the main thing. But generally, that's the main potential risk to long term, is that those oil prices feed through to inflation, and we don't think that's particularly likely at this moment in time.
Okay, Scott, that's great. And final question: should investors be worried right now?
Yeah. I mean, I think we probably will build up a decent log of videos of people asking me that question, and the answer is always no. Our job on the funds in Astute Investment Management is to worry on behalf of our investors. We were worrying about Iran through basically since Trump took office, and obviously we saw actions in Iran last year with the bunker buster bombs for the nuclear program, so on and so forth. So it's always, we've talked a lot about uncertainty in the world. Iran and the potential of a conflict in Iran is one of actually the more potential certain scenarios that we could consider. So yes, we've been worrying about it a long time. You don't need to worry about it now. Obviously it will cause volatility and all the things I've just talked about, the oil price and so on, but it's one of the kind of known unknowns that was out there. So we do feel sufficiently diversified across the portfolios. We have certain things in place in terms of defensive assets that we think will do relatively well in these conditions, even if it becomes a kind of sustained conflict. It's really that first step of diversification you need. You need to give yourself good options in the event a risk materializes, as this one has, and then you can react to it over time. And we think we're sufficiently diversified within the funds that this initial sort of shock phase won't actually be too detrimental for us. Obviously, we've seen markets dip a little bit today, but nothing really momentous. So yeah, we feel reasonably well positioned for this initial shock, and we will, if depending on how it develops, be able to adapt and shift in response. I think that the main thing for investors is that you know, it's our job to worry about this stuff. If planning is how you sort of vaccinate against risk, you know, and plans is what helps you not make bad decisions in these moments. And that's our job, is to have plans for all these different scenarios, and we do. So yeah, the same message as always, really. Investors don't need to worry. Let us worry for you. This shouldn't have any impact on anybody's long-term financial plans. That's basically our proposition. You sit down with your planner, we'll look after the investments, you just get on with your life, and we'll worry about the things in the world that we need to worry about.